G'day folks. Well, it's time to finish this project. Let's get this tyre machine working on single phase and be done with it. I've got the rest of the parts still there. There's a lot of junk sitting on top. That doesn't matter. The main thing I want to know is I want to get back into there. I've had it hooked up before for testing, so at least I know I can run new cables straight to the motor. I'm using an old UPS battery pack box to house the VFD. That's going on there. Drilled all the holes, just got to bolt it in. Made a cable entry gland point. That's going to be at the bottom, like so. It'll be mounted on the back obviously, but it'll sit up there. It's got little feet on it to space it out, and I'll just have 4 6mm bolts going into the back panel, because there's plenty of clearance between everything and that steel back panel, which is a 1/4 inch thick. So I'll just drive some screws in and Loctite them. That'll keep it away far enough to let air come up through these slots, because the bottom of the heat sink of the drive will be over that slot there, and everything else rising up will come out through there. I'll have a sheet metal splash guard over the top, so if it does get splashed with water it's fine. There's also some perforations in the casing, but not a lot. The amount of time the drive is going to be running will be very minimal. I mean, it's only when you're running the table to mount and dismount, and since this isn't actually an active workshop, it's not going to see much use at all. Like, it might get used once every few weeks to do a tyre or two, either for repair or just stripping down a scrap one, because there are some junkers out the back that I've been meaning to get rid of. Probably got about a dozen or so scrap tyres to get rid of. Some of them are still on rims, so it's yeah, kind of neat to have this thing working properly. So yeah, that's how it's going. I've got an extra air outlet here. I might rejig that. There's an inline oiler for the air cylinders that needs to be filled. But I might even put a shut-off valve on this, because if I pull it off, I lose all the air in the system, which is quite a bit. But if I leave it connected, there are still a couple of little air leaks that I can't really fix, particularly this clamping cylinder, which, believe it or not, that is actually a pneumatic cylinder, and a few little valves and things just sit there leaking. That leaks most when it's clamped, which is avoidable. You just clamp it when you're ready to take the bead off and then unclamp it. But yeah, it'd be nice just to have a shut off, so I can shut it off, pull the airline off without dumping the system pressure in one big noisy blast. Particularly being a residential carport, you don't want a massive blast of compressed air every time I unplug it. And I'll also have an accessory line which will obviously have the inflator gun on it, and make a maybe an extension of this thing here, a hanger, because all I need is clearance past here for the tyre. So if I make a accessory tray with valve tool and a hanger for the air gun and all that jazz in there, that'll be fine. I might even make this bigger so it takes 2 levers, because it is handy having 2 levers at times. Not really required, but it's certainly handy sometimes to have 2 levers. So that can stay there. I just need a little holder or something. I don't know what that used to be. Either way, this will turn into a nice little rig, because the bead breaker cylinder seems to be holding its seal and performing very well. The other thing I want to do is replace this big rubber block, which has gone so hard it's now plastic. Same with the one down there and the one up there, which is missing. So if I do an alloy face first onto here, it's going to wreck the face of the alloy. So all that needs to come off and be redone. Wondering if even chunks of good tyre tread will do. I've got a good one out there. It's the sidewall got gacked by something at the scrapyard one day. It's a hole about that big. You could put a sleeve patch over it and tube it for a trailer, but to be honest, it's a 15-inch and I really don't need it. It's been out in the weather and full of bad water for quite a while too, so it's still got 3/4 or even more tread on it, so it might actually be good to cut sections of tread out and stick it, or not stick it, but screw it to the chassis of this thing just as a rim protector. Otherwise I've got to try and track down some solid rubber blocks, which I really don't know who does it. I've got plenty of places that do extrusion of plastics, like polyethylene and that sort of thing, but not rubber. I'll have a hunt around. Maybe there's some kind of bumper kit or something like that at Repco I could buy that I could just cut up and modify. Okay, that looks a lot better. Still doesn't quite come out far enough to yeah, I'm saying it could have come out further if I had to, but the box is big enough as it is. I know it does look funny sticking out the back, but you've got to remember the head has to be able to swing back. Otherwise you can't get your next tyre on there very easily. In this way you can lock the lock this position. If you've got 4 or 5 to do the exact same tyre and rim, you can set this height and position clearance, lock it in and leave it. All you got to do is swing it back out of the way when you're changing between jobs. It makes repetition very easy. So yeah, it doesn't have to be able to swing back, but it just means you've got to reset the height and the position against the foot against the rim every single time, which is time consuming. So yeah, there's enough space back here to still have the box and air accessories and all that sort of thing. It's very good. I've also put a 10 amp breaker in there. The original one on the battery box was 40 amps, that's way too much, so I've got a 10er and I'm just going to run the VFD in there and we should be all sweet. Just reach underneath and you can reset it if it goes off. It's only in case the drive goes critical or does something stupid like that. As one of my subscribers pointed out, they can burn out pretty bad and it would be a bad idea to have it inside here with all the pneumatics. Better off have it in its own metal box on the back of the machine. Always good to be safe, especially because it's going to live out in the carport with this other shit that can burn. At least if it's inside here, it's got a chance of tripping out and shutting itself off, and the air holes aren't big enough to really allow serious flame propagation, so it'd burn the box, but it wouldn't destroy anything else. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure how well rated those drives are as far as fire retardation goes, but I'd be willing to bet they're not that good. Not being very cheap China stuff. And cables go back up into there. So drive, control and power go back into the original cable hole, and that's it. Pretty much done. I just need my little splash shield. I might fold that up at work out of some thin aluminium sheet. Put it on a couple of little standoffs so I've got air coming up through the holes as well. Yeah, the drive doesn't need a huge amount of room to breathe because it's not running at full power all day or anything like that. It's only running for 30 seconds at a time, and then it's got a bit of cool down time, so it's fairly light duty, just fairly high torque motor. So I'll keep playing with the VF and torque curve on it as needed, but I'm more interested in actually toning it down so it's a gentle start off and then torque ramp up after I've actually got the tyre lever under the bead and everything's sweet. Because this could be a bit of a handful under normal power. When I was running it on 3-phase, you'd get times when it was slipping on the rim or it was causing other problems, and you'd wish you actually had some kind of torque limiting or torque control or ramp up. And this does it. It's actually really handy. Anyway, let's keep going. There we go, that's looking better. I did have to take this off to get the nuts behind it because I'm an idiot and I completely forgot. Anyway, it's only 4 screws. Everything's Loctited in now, and the spring washers actually did an exceptional job of holding it as well. The screws were very difficult to get out. Those spring washers bite in hard. Yeah, it's good. It's square, it's straight. It's right in there. Run power underneath. It's up just high enough. I could have almost gone with a side cable entry, but then it'd become part of the side removable cover, and I don't really want that. I'd rather just be able to take the cover off without having to feed the power cable through every time. Yeah, good. Looking very professional. You can tell I've done this sort of stuff plenty of times before. Building panels and things is just part of the job. Okay, let's drive in. Cable's neat enough and definitely not going to chafe on anything, but best I can do. The drive itself doesn't have any space or provisions for glands on it, so I can't actually internally clamp off or fit off anything without cutting the conductors really short and trying to stuff the wire up in there. So it'll do just fine. It's all out of the way. These chassis mount cable ties are absolutely fantastic. One of the best donations so far. Well, as far as utility equipment goes, it's really awesome. Along with test meters and other equipment like that, it's all gratefully appreciated because it goes towards some Really interesting stuff. Yeah, so I better hook up the other end, the business end. Got motor power and control. I have to pull that drum switch out next, and we'll wire that one. That will be tomorrow's job. Thanks for watching. G'day folks. Just a bit of an update on how I'm going with the tyre machine. As you can see, the drive's actually installed now. I'm just working on hooking up the motor. All new terminals and crimp connectors properly fitted off. So that's all good. I'm going to have control going down to the drum switch there, which used to be a 3-phase reversing drum switch. It'll now just switch the VFD's own internal forward reverse command. So that goes to X1, X2 and common, 2-wire setup. Yeah, it's all nicely fitted in here using a former UPS battery box. It was a spare battery box for one of my PowerWare. It was a 1920 or something series, old 1 kVA PowerWare UPS. So it's well and truly bolted and secured to the back panel. All wiring's going up inside it. And there's a vent underneath there going to the back, so we should get a bit of convection flow through the heatsink. The drive will only be running for maybe 30 seconds at a time at the most, between 10 and 30 seconds, so heat dissipation is not really going to be an issue, but I still gave it a bit of breathing room. So it's got this whole metal box to breathe in. Case covers up there. So yeah, the drive will work really well. I'm going to put a shut-off valve on the air system as well. Unplugging it dumps a ton of air, makes a hell of a racket, and it's just a waste of air, so I'd rather put a shut-off valve on there before I disconnect it. That's going to be an accessory line for the tyre inflator and everything else. The head still swings back past the point of the VFD box, so I still need to have the wall about here. There's still plenty of clearance. The box in the back is not going to interfere with anything. Should be good. Really good. Single phase and compressed air. That's all I'll need to run this machine. Perfect. Got some old tyres to change over, some old ones on Betty, as well as some scrap ones to dismount and dispose of, so I can scrap the rims. Should be really good. Yeah, I'll have a few videos coming up on this one, operating it, how to operate it, and a bit of fun with Betty before I get rid of some of the old tyres. We'll see if I can rip the sidewall out of one at 40 psi and capture it on high speed film. Bit of scrap metal, like maybe something like that. If you accidentally drove over that, that'd make a hell of a hole. I'll see if I can yeah, set something up and destroy one of those worn out, like virtually no tread tyres. As you can see, I've already been messing around with ideas. Should go kaboom! Oh, something similar. Let's hope for poppage. Either way, I've got the machine to change it over, and I've got 2 very good usable replacements, or brand new ones. Might just clean the rims up and get 2 brand new ones for the front and put the older ones on the back. Quite easy. I think I've got about 8 spare usable but old, harder compound tyres to use. Yeah, Betty doesn't get out very much, so I don't think she'll mind. Okay, so last step. I've got the drum switch out. It's waterproof housing, somewhat waterproof. I guess you'd call it splash proof. The pedal came off easy enough. A grub screw and a bushing for the front of the pedal. I think it went like that. And the front housing. And yeah, I was able to pull the whole thing out as one unit. So yeah, it's just a big forward reverse drum switch. Yep. Made in Italy. by Bramus, 40 amp 550 volt. That's a hell of a switch. Considering this motor only draws about 2 amps, but that's the way it's set up. They needed the contacts and the solid durability, so you use a big switch. A switch of half that rating probably wouldn't have lasted as long. But a nice big switch like that, perfect for a foot operated drum switch. Just overrate it to hell. Hell, the drive that I've installed in here is probably twice the horsepower of the motor, but at least I know it's going to last long enough. If I put one the same rating as the motor, I'd probably kill it fairly quickly. That goes for any VFD conversion. Particularly with the China ones, I recommend overrating them 200%. So if you've got a 2 horsepower motor, get a 4 horsepower drive. Or at least a 3, maybe make it 50% over. If you've got a 1 horsepower motor, get a 2 horsepower drive. It doesn't have to work as hard. You're not going to tax those cheap components as much and risk blowing it. Yeah, just overrate your drive. So, yeah. Very interesting. Let's clean the baby up and wire my foot switch into it and make the turntable go round. Okay, so I probed out the drum switch. Loads of spare contacts, but essentially all I've got is common across these two here, which are bridged out to the normally open and normally closed contacts already. And yeah, reverse and forward. So all you gotta do is, yeah, rotate, switch. Drive goes forward, drive goes back. Simple. There are plenty of spare contacts for other things. It's a hell of a drum switch. It's a 40 amp drum switch, but that's exactly what I want. Nice sturdy piece of equipment. So yeah, forward and reverse on there, and the 2 commons. I'll just bridge that out properly. The wire's barely in there. I need some fairly big spade terminals. But once it's all done, this thing will be bulletproof. Well, drum switch is back in. Everything's wired up as it should be. Let's see what happens with the power on. Hey! It's going the wrong way, but it works. I just have to flip the 2 control wires. I'll do that at the VFD end. I won't bother pulling the drum out again. Yeah, normally it should be forwards to go that direction. Oops. Beautiful. Air bearing and everything's holding up all right. I've rebuilt and resealed all this. All these new fittings and lines are all my work. I've redone all of that because it was leaking like a sieve. Same with all this. This is all my work, all that. All the pneumatics, apart from the base metal parts of the rams and the ram rods and seals. Well, I've even done the minor seals. I've done the small seals. I haven't done the main ram cup seals because they're just unobtainable at the moment. But all the other pneumatics I've just completely rebuilt. The switches, not so much. That one's still okay. Starting to leak. It can get bolted back in, but I've replaced all the Festo push fit fittings on them. Yeah, so all that's going to get tied back up in place. Tie up the main VFD and control cable. It should be all good. I can put the main cover back on and that's it. I'll just have to reverse X1 and X2 at the drive so that I get my correct directional rotation, and bang a cover on this thing and a splash guard, and it's done. Ready for a paint. Actually, I'd like to get a can of Kermit Green and give this thing a proper paint again. Especially around here, there's a lot of rust. Just give it a good rub back with maroon Scotch-Brite, the dark red one, and just rip back all the rust and everything with the coarse Scotch-Brite, and then give it a blow over with a bit of green and white for the side cover, top head assembly. I don't know if the table was ever painted. It does show signs of white paint, so I think the table was painted. That's about it. We'll just mask off the decals on the front, and that's all. And mask everything off, of course. Yeah, beautiful. Good working single phase and air operated tyre machine. Let's finish this bugger off.